All right, hi, I'm Will Kerns. I've been doing bonsai now for, I think, 20 years. I love it. Um, I, I've been meaning to get you to show you this presentation for a really long time. And I'm a student at Bonsai Mirai up in Oregon with Ryan Neal. I've been studying there for a long time, and this presentation is taken from one of the first classes I took there, the repotting class. And I've been meaning to make this into a presentation for like ever since then. So since I think 2013, and I've been trying to make a living and doing all this stupid planning of transportation systems that and I haven't really focused on the important things, which is bonsai. So I finally got around. Tom Anglowitz finally lit a fire under me, and I put my class notes together. I've been working on this presentation, and this is bonsai composition. So what we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the how, the why to put certain trees in certain types of pots. Now, there's no rule that says you have to do this. This is one style of design, of bonsai design, and it's by no means the law, right? There's many schools of thought. Every school has their different design philosophy. This design philosophy comes from Ryan Neal of Bonsai Mirai and was passed down to him from Master Kimura in Japan, who he studied under for 6 years. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. This is a long time in the making, so we are gonna go through it. And I'm gonna try to move fast. I don't want this thing to get too boring and monotonous. It's hard enough looking at a slideshow without any real trees tonight, other than this beautiful Shimpaku juniper that Daryl brought. That's great, and I think what we can do is we can pick a pot for it in this, or we can come up with a composition. We can look at the tree and take some time and figure out what pot it might go best with. So I'm going to give you guys the formula tonight. People come up to me ever since I started studying out in Oregon with Ryan. People have come up to me and they say, "Will, how do you put these compositions together? It's like the tree and the pot are perfect for each other. They're like the way you're approaching this bonsai design. You're pairing the very best pot with the very best tree. It's like a marriage made in heaven." And I tell them, I say, this didn't happen by accident. This happened because I'm using a formula that has worked for Master Kimura in Japan, that works with Ryan in Oregon, and these concepts I'm going to teach you tonight are the formula to create world-class bonsai compositions. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. My voice has been hoarse for the past couple of days, so I got my lemonade, and maybe that'll help. But my voice might kind of give out on me a couple of times or go froggy, so you'll just have to bear with me. So, Ryan has these ideas about different bonsai design concepts. And the main concepts are right here. There are 4 of them. The first is harmony. The second is called tension. The third is a dynamic design concept. And the fourth is an ambiguous look or ambiguous concept for a tree. So today we're talking about bonsai design. Master Kimura's school approaches bonsai design with intention. So those 4 concepts I gave to you are how Kimura looks at a tree and decides what form or what shape that tree might look like after he's done styling it. And these concepts are sort of, you can see them through other bonsai designs. They're not just Kimura's, they're not just Ryan's, but not every school approaches bonsai design with intention like Kimura does. Other schools approach bonsai design sometimes from a more nebulous perspective, kind of like do whatever the tree tells you to do, or whatever shape the tree looks like is let the tree be your guide kind of a thing. And sometimes those trees work out great. Other times those trees end up with somewhat of a nebulous design. So let's approach design. I'm going to tell you how we approach design with intention today. Harmony. Okay. This is a really great design language. And that's really what these 4 things are. These are design languages. A harmony tree. Oh, and also, by the way, I'm recording this presentation. I'm going to do what I can to post this on YouTube, or whatever. I'm going to work with the club. Usually the club has kind of a live stream or a live cam, but today Evan is not here, so I'm just going to try to get this out on the internet for you guys. If I can't get the recording, I will just post the slideshow, because the slideshow is really what's important. This is where you guys are getting the formula. The first feeling, harmony. All 3 directions of the tree being the trunk line, the main branch being the number 1 branch, which is typically the longest, lowest, and strongest branch, typically. And the apex of the tree, all are moving in the right, in a singular direction. So in this case, they're pulling the eye from left to right. All 3 agree. The apex moves in the same direction. Main branch, trunk line, all move in the same direction. These can be feminine, elegant, and delicate, but you can also do this design with a masculine tree as well. Harmony trees are usually some of the most quiet and contemplative tree designs, and are evocative of wind and rugged landscapes. The second design language is tension. Tension is when you have the trunk moving in one direction, but the main branch and the apex move in the opposite direction of that trunk direction. So this is a very common design language. This is actually one of the easier ways to make a bonsai quickly. It's great for trees lacking natural interest. It adds interest through design. And tension is one of the most common, like I said, it's one of the most commonly used designs in bonsai. You can really create a nice tree with this design language. Okay, the third. This one is a little bit tougher. This one is called dynamic. Dynamic is where the apex or main branch contradict 2 other elements of the tree. So, for my example here, I said the apex moves in an opposite direction while the main branch and trunk line move in the same direction. Now, you can pick any element of this and have the 2 other elements contradict, and you will have achieved a dynamic design. This is a difficult to achieve design language. Sometimes it takes the right tree, sometimes it takes the right artist to pull one of these designs off, but when it is pulled off successfully, it really makes a stunning composition, and I'll show you some of these. The fourth is ambiguous design. Okay, ambiguous design is not ideal. I don't recommend it. Sometimes some trees have this, and it doesn't have a direction. It doesn't have flow. It doesn't pull the eye in any particular direction. It's very stagnant and very symmetrical. Ambiguous design, it's often called the green helmet. It's a stagnant design with no movement or direction, and viewers of these ambiguous trees can get bored quickly. But you can easily remedy an ambiguous design by tilting the tree or picking out a number one branch and letting that grow out, or doing something to maybe it's adjusting the potting position of the tree in the pot. So what design is this? Pop quiz. Winner gets a whiskey drink at the happy hour after this. Which one, Bart? Yeah. Yep, this is a harmony tree, absolutely. So the trunk is going to the right. The apex is also generally moving to the right, and the main branch down here also moving to the right. This is one of Ryan's trees at Bonsai Mirai, and really nice tree. I believe this is a Sierra. Oh no, this is a Western juniper. And let's go on to the next one. Any questions so far? Yeah.
In the previous slide, does the gin matter?
So yes, gins can help to point the viewer's eye in a direction. However, in the previous slide, I think that the gin was not the element element pulling the viewer's eye. I think it was more of the foliage and the trunk line. But it did have some wild gins. And this one also has wild gins. The gins on this are all pointing to the right. And what design is this?
Tension.
Yep, tension design. Right? This whole idea of laying the tree over in one direction or another, and then pulling all the. You can even use that laid over trunk to guy wire and pull the foliage down into the shape you're looking to get. This is in a horse Heinzelreiter pot. We're going to talk more about pots in a few minutes here. But really nice tree, Rocky Mountain juniper, the king of American bonsai, as it's called. Rocky Mountain juniper is prized for its great sculptural dead wood. Okay, tension tree. What design is this? Yeah, good. Nice. Like this is a hard one because I can't tell which direction the trunk is moving. It's moving right and then it's coming back left. The gin moves right, then comes back left, then comes back right. So when you have a piece of material like this, there is only one design that's really going to take it to be a world-class tree, and that is dynamic design, where the trunk is moving. To me, this trunk is moving generally right. The main branch is moving to the left, and the apex is moving to the right. This is the two directions contradicting one element. This is dynamic design. What design is this? Yeah, exactly. This is ambiguous design. Look, I get it. I'm sure some of you guys have trees that look like this. Like for this ficus in the yellow pot, this might be its highest and best design. I don't know how to pull a better design out of this. However, what you could do is you could open up some negative space on one side or the other. You don't have to have both branches at the bottom generally at the same level. You could maybe pull one down or even cut one off to give this tree some direction, some flow, some movement. The tree on the right is a nice tree. I would not mind having this tree. This is a really great tree. It looks like a cryptomeria, or maybe who knows what it is. This tree on the right is not bad, and it does have some direction. You can tell that the lowest branch is on the left. However, it's got the green helmet. It's a little like, if you're looking at this tree, you're not going to stick around and fawn over it, right? You're going to look at it, and then you're going to move on to a more interesting tree that maybe has a little bit more flow to it. So a couple things I would do: extend that left branch. I might take back some of the stuff on the bottom right. I might open up a little bit more negative space in there, and possibly even give the apex of the tree some sort of movement as well, if possible. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with having a tree in your collection that is this well refined and this advanced in its design. This thing has probably been growing for a long time. The ficus, maybe not so much. That looks a little bit younger to me. But this cryptomeria, look, if you have trees that look like this, it's okay to have a couple of these in your collection. It's kind of a nice, old. It looks like an old tree, but generally it's not gonna carry your enthusiasm for a very long time.
It will.
Yeah.
So with like central design, where this like trunk is straight up, the apex is just ambiguously central and doesn't really lean the tree taper-wise or apex-wise one way or the other. Is that kind of ambiguous in general?
Is that like, are you talking about formal upright?
See, that's kind of what I'm getting at, because like, is a formal upright going to apply to this? Because the apex is straight and so is the trunk.
Both of these trees, I guess, could be considered formal uprights. I don't know what else you would call them. However, not every formal upright has to look like this.
Right.
Formal uprights can have a low branch. They can have an apex that might be leaning one way or another. There are trees that are very symmetrical, though. There are formal uprights. There are famous formal uprights that are very symmetrical. So,
I'm thinking of a couple of Ryan's redwoods in particular, and like cypress, they kind of
yeah.
really go pretty straight up to like a flat, almost bald top.
But what you'll see with Ryan's, yes, Ryan has formal uprights. What you see with Ryan's designs is that those trees definitely have flow. He never lets anything be too symmetrical. Symmetry is actually one of the enemies of bonsai design in our school of thought. There's very refined trees in Japan that are very symmetrical and that are named as one of the best trees in Japan, I'm sure. But in America, North American bonsai, we avoid symmetry if we can. Okay, so let's talk about tree design. What are we looking for when we're selecting a tree? There's a couple of things that we go through in terms of tree selection and picking a tree to be a bonsai. In the selection of a front of a tree, you want the best of all worlds. You want to be objective, and you don't want to have any emotional attachment to any one feature of the tree. Back up, take a look at the tree as a whole. Look for a line that creates feeling or excitement. You want to look for flow, and you want to look for an asymmetrical design. The first thing your eye sees is the foliage mass. The eye sees the green. The second you want to look at is the nabari, the base, which is find the widest point of the tree. See if there's any interesting features in that base. When we create bonsai, one of the first things you'll learn as a first-year student is if you're looking through nursery stock, like some people dig through vinyl records at the record store, bonsai artists dig through nursery stock. Like we're the same. But what we're doing is we're digging through the bases of those trees. We're looking for root flare. We're looking for which trees have the widest base, the best root spread at the bottom, because when we uncover that, it instantly ages the tree. So that's the second thing you look for besides foliage mass. Also, when you're looking at foliage mass, to circle back, you want to look for healthy foliage, small compact foliage that helps the tree to look more in scale. And you want to make sure that that foliage mass is something that you want to work with. Maybe avoid things with thorns, although you don't have to. You can always cut thorns off. Third is trunk movement. You want a tree that has excitement, that has curves in the trunk, like Daryl's over there. He's put those curves in over 18 years to give the tree more excitement, more curves, which equals more value. It gives the tree more value. Fourth, special features. Are there any special features of your tree? Are there hollows? Are there deadwood? Are there branches that you might remove and turn into deadwood? Are there places on the trunk that have deadwood? What special features are there on the tree? Where are those in relation to your base? Fifth is branch placement and the order of branching. If you're starting out in bonsai, you don't necessarily want a tree that has the largest branch 2/3 of the way up the tree. You want a tree that has a number one branch that's lower down and capable of becoming that number one branch, number two branch, back branch type tree. That's a solid way to start your bonsai, is think about branch placement. The sixth thing to look for is the apex of the tree. How healthy is it? Which way does it move? Is there a way you can make it move in one direction or another? And this last thing are flaws. What flaws does the tree have? Are there things that make this tree a non-starter in terms of flaws? Does it have a rotted base? Does it have a branch that's broken that maybe might not survive? Does it have insects? I don't know. Look, are there any flaws and are there any fatal flaws that make you not want to work with the tree? If there are, discard that tree and move on to a different tree that doesn't have fatal flaws. The other thing about flaws is if you're a good enough artist, you can turn flaws into the focal point of the tree and the main feature of interest of the tree. So if that flaw isn't fatal, that flaw can be a feature. Let's talk about advanced design and the feminine versus masculine. I'm sure all you bonsai artists have heard masculine trees, feminine trees. I don't know, what is this all about? Well, I'm going to tell you what it's about. Feminine trees versus masculine trees. These are the two types of trees that we form in bonsai. The only thing other than a feminine or a masculine tree is an ambiguous tree. An ambiguous tree sometimes doesn't have any sort of features one way or another. So let's talk feminine trees. These are some of my favorite. I find masculine trees sometimes get a little bit boring, and it's important to intersperse feminine trees into your collection. The theory behind feminine trees is they are tall, they are elegant, we elongate feminine features on a more feminine tree. Feminine trees typically have more narrow trunks, more slender. At Bonsai Mirai, for feminine trees, we max out their feminine character. We make them as tall as possible. I'll make a feminine tree, if I have the foliage to do it, I'll make a feminine tree 7 feet tall. Why? Because with a 7-foot tall feminine tree, I can max out the negative spaces between foliage pads. I can amplify that feminine character to the point that that tree becomes a world-class tree, simply because it is tall, it is elegant, it has a narrow structural silhouette. The secondary branching is narrow and more reduced in terms of pad size. The pad sizes might be smaller, might be more narrow. And the tertiary foliar structure is lighter and more delicate. And what we do with our feminine trees is, you can see, boy, and these are my notes, by the way. This is, you're really going to have to look through some chicken scratch, because I took these notes as fast as I could coming out of Ryan's mouth. So if you see where I circled on that feminine tree, where there's a pad, taking it from where it was to being lower and opening up more negative space, you can see from there to there, I increase my negative space between pads. This is the key to feminine form design. Maximize negative space between pads, narrow the structural silhouette, and max out the height of it. Okay? So now let's talk about masculine trees. You maximize interest in a masculine tree by bringing the foliage closer to the points of interest, closing down negative space, framing features, framing gins with foliage. The theory behind masculine trees is to compact the tree. Maybe you make it a little bit shorter, maybe squatter, but with that shortness, maybe that tree is a little bit wider and stronger. Structurally, we are expanding and widening the silhouette as much as possible. The secondary branching is expanded, wider pads. So maybe with a masculine tree, if you have a masculine tree but you don't have the big pads yet, take other branches and form and pull other branches in and make huge pads with multiple branches. Okay, because with a masculine tree, it's not just about having one branch that's the biggest branch on earth and has the best pad ever. We can employ some tricks here. We can pull in other branches to make a pad that goes almost 3/4 of the way around the tree in one pad of foliage. Okay, this is masculine form. This is how we achieve a world-class masculine form design. The tertiary structure, the very tips of the foliage, are dense, they're more compact, and they carry more visual mass on the pads. Whereas a feminine form tree has lighter, more airy pads. So that's it. I mean, it's that easy. It's that easy. That's it. That's the formula. Now we're going to go much deeper than this, okay? This isn't, don't worry. You didn't come all this way just to get that. But now you have the keys, okay? I've just handed you your keys. Now I'm going to fill your gas tank with $5 a gallon gas. I was in California the other day. It was $6.79 a gallon, so we have it pretty easy here. Okay, next part of advanced design is that the apex of the tree can be used to help guide the eye in a particular direction. And we talked about that in the different design languages. So the directional insinuation of the apex, as Ryan says, you can have the apex be longer in one place to give the tree more of a feeling of movement. You can have the apex elevated in a particular place. So the apex of the tree, this is the top of the tree. We treat the top of the tree just like another branch. A lot of people really get freaked out by the apex. They look at apexes, they try to figure them out, but really, in your eye, we just treat the apex as just one more branch. That's it. You don't have to freak out about it. But you can use that apex to show movement. So through length, through an elevated part of the apex, so maybe the apex goes like that. It has a point. The apex has an apex. That becomes the apex of the tree. And if the trunk is down here, that apex creates tremendous, here I'll do it in the video so you guys can see, that apex creates tremendous flow one way or another. Elevation, the position of the high point, all three can be used in combination, or you can use just one. All right, from the sensei himself. If you are watching and waiting for a tree to grow, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. If you let it grow, you will never have enough time. And this is so true. This is especially true for those of you that have only one bonsai. Because what happens when you only have one bonsai? You're just looking at it. You're waiting for it. Oh, I can't wait for that branch to just be an inch longer. Or, I can't wait for this to happen. Or someday this is going to be a great tree, but I'm just going to sit here and pick at it. And I promise you're going to pick that tree to death. So get some more trees. Get at least 5 trees, I would say. That way you're not watching and waiting for the tree to grow. You have enough stuff to do with 5 trees or maybe 10 trees that you can that you're then letting the trees grow. And then you're reacting to the trees. That's actually the best thing to do in bonsai, is to not be so proactive, not be over proactive, but to be reactive. Let the tree grow, react to the tree, wire it down. Oh, this tree needs to be pruned. while you're pruning that tree that you just wired, that thing's growing again. Okay, so we're not picking at them too much. All right, so okay, you guys got the keys. Yeah, sure. Question.
Are you going to go back to masculine, feminine at all?
That was masculine, feminine, but let's answer questions. Who has questions?
I just have a question. So I'm looking at Daryl's tree, which is outstanding, and I see real graceful movement, but it's also a thick trunk. So would you push it one way or the other, or what do you define it as now, and how would you go with it?
This is a real beaut. The trunk is moving to the right, for sure. If this is your front, which I love this as the front because of all the root flare, the dead wood, you have this little hollow in the trunk here, right? That's a feature. Then the really nice foliage. So
do you find it?
to me, this looks kind of tension as it
Push
says.
it one way or the other?
You know, if you were to take this into attention design, which is what the tree is currently sort of at, it's an informal upright, but it's definitely doing this. So to me, that's tension design. You could even gin some of this stuff over here and make more gin and make more foliage this way. That's one design language. The other thought.
Would you call it masculine now, or would you call it feminine?
This is a
Would you
masculine
push it one way or the other?
This is a masculine tree.
It's masculine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean that root flare, the straight. That's a strong tree.
But if you were to prune it a lot, could you push it feminine and? would
Yes.
it be good?
Yes. Because that trunk isn't so massive that, like, you're at a nice place with this tree's development, because if you really wanted to make a feminine tree out of it, yes, you could. With the right, you would, narrow the like I said, narrow the silhouette, add negative space, maximize the height of it. However, I like that tree for a masculine form tree. That tree seems like Daryl has been styling it into a masculine form tree for a long time. So, there's other trees that might be a better feminine form tree than that. That's the other thing. Like, yes, you could make that tree into a feminine form tree, but is your time better spent with a more feminine piece of material to really emphasize, really maximize the feminine character, instead of trying to force a masculine tree into a more feminine form, which you can. And who knows? I have trees that, I've made mistakes on, or they've died back, or like something's happened to them. I've lost branches, and all of a sudden I only have the top of the tree. But then I realize, maybe I can just turn the top of this tree into a tree, and all of a sudden it becomes a feminine form tree. Like, these trees are always evolving. They're always changing. We're always reacting to them. And the cycle of a bonsai's life can include many restylings. In fact, if you're bored with a tree, you should restyle it or get rid of it. Sell it to somebody who really likes it. But it's okay to restyle a tree completely. And in fact, Master Kimura is called the Magician because he is one of the premier people in the world to restyle trees. He will take a tree and literally flip it upside down, and you can look it up. There's a famous tree in the Bonsai Art of Kimura, which is a book, and it's called Kimura Flips. And it is where Kimura takes a tree and he flips it upside down and he turns it into this beautiful work of art. So let's talk. We've been talking for 30 minutes. Any other questions, by the way? So let's talk about the other half of the composition. Because the tree can only be a bonsai if it is in some kind of a container. The bone in the sai needs a bone to become a bonsai. Bonsai ceramics provide balance and stability, function and aesthetic, versus the health of the tree. So, sometimes you'll see me or you'll see Ryan or you'll see some of us people from Bonsai Mirai putting very big trees into very small pots, and you'll say, how are you accomplishing this? And it is because we're pushing the aesthetic of the container, yet we're still confident that we can keep the tree healthy, which is the number one thing in bonsai, is keeping the tree healthy. And man, I thought I was really good at bonsai, and then last winter came, or the winter before last came and hit me in the mouth. And then I'm fighting fungus, I'm fighting stuff, and like some of my trees are getting sick, other trees are fine. So bonsai is all about horticultural mastery. And man, the longer I do bonsai, I guess the more mistakes I make. So the health of the tree is paramount. You have to have a healthy tree to make good bonsai, and you have to be able to keep the tree healthy. So just putting a tree into a small pot because you want to is one thing, but the question is, can you put it in a small pot and keep it there sustainably and keep it healthy and keep it vigorous? That's another question. And can you water it enough if the pot is really small? Bonsai pots. Number one is the clay color. Number two, we're going to be talking about the shape, and you're going to be seeing some shapes mostly from a bird's eye view in my very illegible notes. Three is the shape of the corner of the pot. And corners are funny because corners and rims are very similar, and we're going to be talking about that. So the shape of the corner of the pot. Midsection decoration, we're going to be talking about midsection decoration. Sometimes you'll see pots that have something on the midsection, when we're going to be talking about what that means. 5, we're going to be talking about lower section decoration. And 6, last but not least, we're going to be talking about the foot of the pot. Glazed containers are new and flashy. They do not lend themselves to conifers, which are rugged. This is a general rule of thumb in bonsai. This is why you see pines, junipers, spruces in containers that are unglazed. And this is why you see deciduous trees in containers that are glazed. Because deciduous trees renew every year. Every year they get new leaves. They're new. So the container, generally, you want the container to reflect that sense of newness, sense of life. Glazed containers do that. Now, all rules are meant to be broken, and I break rules in design, and sometimes some of my most fun and most interesting trees are ones where I've broken a rule or two. Shapes of bonsai pots. We have a round shape, a rectangle shape, an oval shape, square shape, lotus shape, a hexagon or octagon, a floral shape, and then one of my favorites, which is crescent shape, stone shape, slab, or freeform type pot. These are generally all bonsai pots can be characterized as one of these shapes. Okay, the rubber band. Let's talk about the rubber band effect in pottery. When you're looking at pottery and when you're looking at bonsai, this is the rubber band effect. You can lose width and increase the depth, or you can lose depth and increase the width. You're shooting for equal visual mass for both the tree and container. Although it's fun to play sometimes with that visual mass where the tree is more massive and the container is very small. That's an area where Ryan has been playing with a lot lately, and some of his students have been playing with a lot. Here we go. A lot of you know this. This is very common knowledge. This is 101. Rectangle pots are generally from more masculine trees. Rectangle pots are more angular, and they complement masculine trees, which also may have more angularity in them. Rectangle shaped pots are characterized by a hard angle and visual mass, hence making it ideal for a masculine form bonsai, while an oval container is more ideal for a feminine form bonsai due to its soft, smooth, oval character. It has more of a roundish movement. It's thinner usually. Usually oval pots carry a little bit less visual mass. Round containers. So round containers can be shallow. They can be non-bond style, which non-bond style means the container doesn't have feet. It's connected with the surface. Round containers can be slender and can be used for slender, tall, bunjin, or feminine trees, or informal uprights. Now, look, this is not a law. There's nobody that's going to slap the cuffs on you if you put a tree into a round pot. And I'm going to give you some more keys to round pots because we have a ton of round pots in America. We are just flooded with round pots, round bonsai pots. In fact, some of you might only have round bonsai pots in your pottery collection. And there's a good reason for it. It's because a round bonsai pot can be thrown on a potter's wheel. And like there's just a lot of people that have pottery wheels that know a little bit of something about bonsai and throw around bonsai pots. So we are awash in them. But tonight, I'm going to teach you how to use them properly and really maximize the character of a round bonsai pot and pick the correct tree to put in that. Other forms of round bonsai pots are a taiko style pot, which might look more like a drum. It might have little things that look like rivets in there. Taiko pots are thick, they're masculine. They can be used for off-kilter trees or slanting style trees. Why? Because a taiko pot feels like an anchor. It's anchored to the ground. It feels very massive visually and provides a very stable base for a tree that might have an extreme degree of tilt in the trunk. If your base is the same size as your rim, you have achieved ultimate stability, and taiko pots are very typical, have the same size base as the rim. So that's a very stable feeling in terms of design. The narrower the base of a okay, so let's talk about cascading pots. So say for a cascading round pot, the narrower the base a cascading pot becomes, the closer the trunk of the tree needs to be to that pot. So if you have like a cascade, say you have a square pot and you're putting in a cascading tree into it, since it's square, you can make that cascade lean really far over and not upset the visual composition or the visual feeling that that tree has. It looks like it's solid. Whereas a cascade pot that's more narrow towards the bottom, you need to pull that trunk in closer to the pot to achieve that same stable feeling with the tree cascading off the pot. Okay, here's an example of a rectangle pot. This pot is on loan from Todd Schlafer. He's been moving into his new place, and he had me. He was kind enough to let me take care of some of his most prized pottery and keep an eye on it. And this pot has actually won an award, I believe. So I'm lucky enough to have this in my collection currently, but it's going to go back to Todd soon. You can see here this rectangle pot is characterized by hard angles. It's a general rectangle shape, but you can see it has cut corners where Tom actually formed the corners to cut in at a diagonal before going back to the rectangular shape. Here we have a Jim Gremmel non-bond pot at the top. Non-bond, remember I said non-bonds are connected to the surface. They don't have feet. Very simple, very, I think non-bond is sort of one of the first ceramic forms ever made. I think it came out of China actually, is this pottery shape. Below it, we have a partial crescent tray by Nikki D'Amico, who, I don't know if she makes pots anymore, but I have a couple of her pots. I really like her. She does some really cool, creative styles with bonsai pots, and her ceramics, very creative, as you can see there. Below that, we have a Ron Lang oval pot, and this is a pot that I picked up fairly recently. I actually ordered this pot just to get Ron's attention so he would build me a custom commission, which we'll see soon. And I'm so glad I got this pot from him because he's not making pots anymore. He retired shortly. He retired after, I think he retired after this firing. So this was one of his last firings, and he's no longer making pots. So his Ron Lang pots have gone up in value. I think they've doubled since just in this last year. So pretty crazy. I got to find a good tree to put in that pot. I'm on a mission to do that. All right, let's talk more about pot shapes. Square pots. Square pots are slightly more masculine. They're typically always used for cascade or semi-cascade trees. Now, they don't have to be. Remember, they don't have to be. And in fact, sometimes they're great to make kusamonos out of, or used to make accent plants, or little like flowering gardens, things like that. Lotus pots. Lotus pots are for more ambiguous feeling trees. In fact, sometimes Yamadori, sometimes the trees we're collecting out of the Colorado mountains don't have a masculine or feminine form necessarily. Sometimes they are kind of ambiguous in terms of their trunk shapes, and we have to use what we can get out of these trees. So also, you're looking at this form, this lotus form. You are looking at this from a top view. It looks kind of like a peanut. This is the top view of a lotus pot. I was drawing very quickly and taking notes, so that's as good of a sketch as I could do with the time I had. So with lotus pots, we use weird trees. We use strange trees. Maybe they're androgynous trees, neither male or female. These are perfect for a lotus pot. Generally, they have to be upright to really make a lotus pot work. So let's move over to the bottom left. Hexagon pots and octagon pots. Typically, when we view a hexagon pot, it's more of a masculine type pot. It has fewer sides, so we pair that with a masculine tree, while an octagon pot has more sides to it, so we pair that typically with a more feminine tree, but it depends on your tree. These are in between round and square pots. These are sort of also a more androgynous style pot, but as you can see here, we've divided them into categories. These are great for cascades or semi-cascades and slender informal uprights. The little diagram at the bottom shows a hexagon pot, and depending on how you plant the tree in the pot, you can have the pot look wider by making the front on that face there, that face at 12 o'clock, or you can also narrow a hexagon pot by planting it at that 2 o'clock face, and it makes it look a little bit more narrow. So depending on the silhouette of the tree you're going for, this is a little trick we use. All right, next one is a floral looking pot. These pots are also, this is drawn from a top view. These are great for blooming bonsai, slender informal uprights, or cascades and semi-cascades. Then last but not least is my favorite, the crescent stone planting. These are, we can also put in the tray. The tray also goes in this category. Crescent stone tray, these give the artist total control of the visual impression you are trying to make. Does this make sense? So in a crescent or a tray or a stone, it gives the viewer, it looks like a landscape. A tray is so wide that it's easy to make a tree look like it's amongst a landscape. Okay, a crescent pot. Crescents come in many forms. The pot I showed you was not. It was sort of a crescent, but it wasn't a full. There's some crescent pots that come all the way around that really sort of contain the tree, and the tree is growing out. The Denver Botanic Gardens has a beautiful ficus growing in a crescent pot that Larry has back in the back here. So that's a really cool tree, and Larry put it in this crescent pot, or maybe it was donated in that crescent pot, but that crescent really sets the stage. It really gives the artist who put that together has full control over what the viewer is seeing and which way their eyes are shifting through that crescent's shape and the tree coming out of the crescent. Crescent stones, they remind people of a landscape. Any tree and any style of tree can be used in these. This is a very versatile type of pottery or container. However, care requirements, especially with stone plantings, increase exponentially. So, stone planting, you'll see when you start putting together stone plantings, they dry out much faster than any of your other potted bonsai because they're on a stone and they're just exposed to more wind. The roots are more exposed, so you have to water more often. You have to be more careful. You have to be more on it with your care. All right, so talk more about some pots here. We have a Horst Heinzelreiter at the top. This is a lotus pot. This is more of a round lotus. Other lotuses are made in more of an oval style, but this one is a round, and Horst does a really nice job with his glazes, and Horst is a very creative potter. He makes some really creative, cool-looking pottery. Below that is a Sarah Rayner oval, and this is a tray. So this is that tray style where it gives me, the bonsai artist putting the composition together, more control over the feeling of a landscape, of the tree being put into a landscape and growing there. Below that is a Peter Carner glazed oval pot. This is made by Peter. Peter lives here locally in Denver. He's a fine artist, fine art ceramicist, and he has an interest in bonsai, and he has been making some really great bonsai pots. But he doesn't always make bonsai pots. Mostly he gets by, he makes a living making fine art pottery. However, he's interested in bonsai, and he found a really great bonsai clay body, and he's making some beautiful stuff. Okay, pop quiz. What type of pot is this? Floral. Good job, Normando. It seems like a lotus because of the lobes. Totally get that. However, when you see that the lobes are all the way around, so from the top view, it looks kind of like a flower. This is a floral pot.
I'll take that Scotch neat, sir.
You're coming right up. All right, so filling up the gas tank now. Why do we use round pots? Well, round pots are great. They're great for trees that maybe you don't want to pick a specific front. Maybe the tree can be viewed from multiple angles, looks good. Maybe it's a 360-degree bonsai. Well, a round container, that's your bag. Round container is best utilized with the top of the apex of the tree breaking the rim of the pot. So if the rim of the pot is here, my apex breaks that rim. I've achieved a better composition by doing that than having the apex of the tree directly above the round pot, because when the apex of the tree is directly above the round pot, as you can see in the diagram here, it doesn't have as much flow. It doesn't move as much. Even though that trunk is curvy, it isn't as compelling as a tree whose apex breaks the rim of the round pot. And one of the reasons for this is that we use round pots for feminine trees more often than not. And when we're using feminine trees, what are we trying to do? we're trying to elongate, and we're also trying to maximize negative space. And by breaking the rim of the pot with the apex, we've now achieved more negative space between whatever lowest branch of the tree we have and the table below the pot. Okay, so we've maximized our negative space by tilting the tree in the round pot, because whatever height that pot is additional negative space below our tree's foliage. Some more nuances with containers. Unglazed containers are best for conifers. Glazed containers are best for deciduous. There's no hard and fast rule. Depends on the tree. There is what's called a washed pot. A wash is a type of, it's kind of like a glaze, but it's not quite a glaze. It's a treatment that a ceramicist does to a pot. In fact, that Ron Lang pot, that Ron Lang oval that I showed you, it had kind of a sheen to it, and I think that is because Ron uses a wash. And I think he uses like a magnesium wash or something crazy that gives it a little bit of a sheen to an unglazed pot. So washed pots can be used for both conifers or deciduous. Contrasting containers. So you can use a contrasting container to emphasize excitement. If the container does not match your tree trunk or compositional elements, having a contrasting container can create an exciting composition. Whereas if you're trying to, like say you have a harmony tree, say it's a pine harmony tree, and you're trying to make it look old, calm, quiet, having the container match a sort of color element in your tree's design creates a more calming effect. That easy, pretty simple. Darker containers look older, while lighter containers look newer. All right, I think I'm starting to put you guys to sleep, but I'm almost all the way through. We got a little bit more. We're rounding third base. We're on the home stretch. Bonsai pot characteristics. We're going to talk about rim. We're going to talk about corners of the pot. We're going to talk about midsection, lower section, and feet. I already talked about this. Let's move on. The rim. An outward curving rim is the majority of pots used in bonsai. Why? Well, a rim decreases the heaviness of the container. A rim makes the container feel and look a little bit lighter than it is. A rounded rim can be a softening feature. It can take a more masculine container and make it apply to maybe a slightly more feminine tree with depending on how soft the rim is. An inward curving rim adds stability. It holds the tree into the pot. You're adding an element of stability. So for an inward curving rim, maybe an inward curving rim on a round pot, you can really break the wall of the pot with your apex of your tree, simply because of the shape of that pot adds that stability to the tree's base. Inward curving rims also disguise the fact that the pot may be slightly too big for the tree, but that can be good because it's just more space for that tree to grow in. So helping you keep that tree horticulturally alive and vigorous. Yeah, Pat?
No,
Oh, okay. Any questions so far? All right. Straight wall pots.
I got a question.
Sorry
Mm,
about the
mhm.
non-bond.
Does this mean the bottom of the pot is actually touching the
Yeah.
platform?
Doesn't have feet.
Is there any problem with draining or oxygen?
Sometimes there can be. Sometimes a good potter will put a little like drainage channel into the bottom of the non-bond pot. Sometimes the bottom of the non-bond pot is like, typically if you buy a non-bond pot, it's not going to be made in a machine or made in a mold. It's probably going to be thrown on a potter's wheel, and it might have some sort of variation in it, some sort of wabi-sabi that maybe allows that to drain. If it doesn't drain, if you found a non-bond that has a totally flat bottom, you might have to put it on two little toothpicks or something just to allow it to drain. to keep your tree's roots from going into a root rot condition. Good question.
I've just never seen one in the flesh, so I've heard the term but never seen one, so I don't know what
They're there. They should drain. If they don't drain, we put a toothpick under it. Something. Straight wall pots. Okay, straight wall pots are the heaviest feeling of pot. They are simple. They offer understated beauty. You can use a straight wall pot to contrast with a more ornate or flamboyant tree, and that speaks of self-control. Oh, Bart just left. Okay. Well, this pot on top is Bart's pot. He forgot to take it, so I've been borrowing it from him. I love this pot. It's a cascading pot, and this pot, since it's a cascading pot, it narrows towards the base. So remember, for a cascade that we're using this pot with, we want to bring the tree's cascading trunk a bit closer to the pot to achieve that feeling of stability. This one has an outward curving rim. The pot in the middle is a potter, Ken Shenstone. He's in Lower Michigan. He makes pottery in his wood-fired kiln. He is not also kind of like, he's one of Peter Carner's friends. Doesn't typically make bonsai pots, but did a run of them, and I managed to snag 2 of them. This one is a good example of a pot with an inward curving rim. See how the rim comes in? It's holding that tree in there. It's giving a feeling of stability. The pot on the bottom is a Japanese rectangle and is a good example of a straight wall pot. You see this pot has no rim. The walls just come straight up to the top of the pot.
Well, with the inward curving, I had a bonsai. It's actually a sweet gum, a black sweet gum.
Yeah.
I had to break the pot. I could not get it out.
They can. Okay, so you're right. An inward curving pot can be a pain in the ass, especially with a root-bound conditioned tree. So what I do, I recently had to repot a tree that had been in a slightly, Nikki made me one of her pots, but it's slightly tapering towards the top. And I had a little cascading juniper in there for like 8 or 10 years, and it was completely pot-bound. What I did is I took a kama, one of these little Japanese sickles, bonsai tools, and I sawed away. And I really had to saw away at it. And, otherwise you have to break the pot, I guess. Otherwise you could kill the tree by trying to pull it out of there. So use a kama, loosen up the root ball. If you don't have a kama, use a big thick chopstick. Take a piece of bamboo, cut it into a big thick chopstick, and you're just gonna have to work it around that inside rim of the pot, knowing that pot has an inward curve and that tree is grown in there. So you can use a heavy duty chopstick to do that if you don't have a kama. All right. Corners of a bonsai pot. Now, the corners of a bonsai pot are typically along the walls. However, some of these corners also apply to a rim. Some of these corner shapes we will see in the rims of bonsai pots as well. So when I think of corners, I think of every corner on the whole pot. Okay? That's corners on the bottom. That's corners on the side. That's corners on the rim. That's corners on the feet. A sharp corner in our bonsai pots is best for masculine trees or more simple trees, simple designs. The angularity goes well with trees that might have sharp angular movements with them as well. Rounded corners obviously soften masculinity. Maybe they're maybe it makes that pot more suitable for a more feminine tree. Inset corners, so where there's a scallop, where the ceramicist took a scallop out of the corner, either on the side or maybe out of the rim. Then, inset corners, scalloped corners where there's maybe more than one just cutout. Maybe there's a couple of cutouts where it's scalloped. Best for a highly ornate tree and short, compact, powerful trees. You're seeing, I know you guys are feeling the formula. This is a formula. This is so easy. This is going to be published online. Everybody's going to have access to this formula now. You guys are all going to be able to make world-class bonsai compositions. It's so easy to put these together. Just look at this spreadsheet, look at this slideshow, and you have the formula. You're going to be able to, now you know how to pair these trees. Cut quarter, best for ambiguous trees. It has less visual weight. Remember that Tom Benda pot that we showed that had the cut sides in the rectangularity? Carries less visual weight, adds femininity without reducing masculinity. That's important. That's important because that's a pot, that's a form of a pot that's more versatile. You can use it kind of for a bunch of different types of trees. You can have it for masculine or feminine trees potentially. So we're back to this same stack of pots, but now we're learning more about what these pots, what these details mean in these pots. So this is a Horst Heinzelreiter lotus pot. It has inset and scalloped corners. You can see some of the corners on this pot are protruding, others are inset. Sarah Rayner oval tray. You see the rim of that? It's an inset rim. She took a cutter and cut a groove out of the rim of that pot. The Peter Carner oval pot, every corner on that pot is rounded. The Tom Benda rectangle pot, cut out sharp corners. Look at that. So the sharp corners mean masculinity. However, this pot is very versatile in that you could put a more feminine type tree in that as well, and it could work perfect for that too, especially looking at some of the other features of that pot, which that pot has some more feminine features as well. Very versatile pot. A Tom Benda rectangle pot. This one also on loan from Todd Schlafer. This is Todd's. Sharp, you can see it has a sharp upper corner, but then it rounds to a rounded lower corner. All right, 10 more slides, you guys. We're almost done. Midsection detail on pots. What do they mean? What does it mean when a pot has a midsection detail? A midsection detail is one level of quality in addition to the pot itself. It's just one more level of quality, and it emphasizes details in a tree that has interesting features. So a midsection detail could be a band or an obi. Band is called an obi in Japanese. Or a rope. You see sometimes the ceramicist puts a rope form on the pot. These are best for trees that have great movement, lots of movement, lots of angle changes. Maybe it's a tension tree that's slanted. They also will help your composition if a pot with a band or a rope is paired with a jin, piece of dead wood, a feature, a shari on a trunk. The inset or protruding square. So you saw that Cascade pot, it had a frame on it. What does that frame mean? Well, the frame works great with junipers that have deadwood, right? Junipers that have a feature, or a singular pine bonsai. It adds a level of detail. It adds, that frame on that pot helps to say, look through my window and look at the features of this tree that's growing in me. Other midsection details including paintings, pictures, or texture. So Ryan told me, always avoid paintings, always avoid pictures. They're not ideal. However, for an ornate tree, maybe it could work. So it depends. Like, is your tree a blooming bonsai? Does it get little crab apples? Does it get flowers? Well, maybe a picture or a painting on your the pot could help that composition. But Generally, paintings and pictures are not ideal. A textured pot, you can use a textured pot as contrast for a smooth juniper. So like think about a smooth juniper or a smooth deciduous tree. Placing it in a rough pot gives that feeling of excitement, okay? We're contrasting. Also, textured pots can look very rugged. So you could, if you don't want to contrast, you could place a rough textured pot with a rough rugged tree to give a feeling of harmony, or give a feeling of a tree in an environment. Okay, back to this stack. So this Japanese cascade pot, we're learning our details. Protruding square with a midsection detail. That's the midsection detail is a protruding square. The Kenshin stone, we have a texture on that Ken put in. And the Japanese rectangle, we have a midsection band, or obi, right there on that lower pot. Lower section detail. What does a lower section detail mean? So instead of putting the band or rope on the midsection, maybe the artist put the band or rope on the lower part of the pot, right above the feet. What does this do? Well, it provides visual weight. It is a stabilizing feature. It can add visual height to the foot of the pot as well. So here we go. This Tom Bender rectangle pot has a lower section inset band. You can see he cut in that lower section. It actually adds more height to those feet, which are also very high. Here's the Ron Lang. This was the Ron Lang pot that I had him custom make for me. This is a cascade pot with a lower section band detail. It also, Ron cut in some inset corners, you can see. Love this pot. Feet. Okay, what do the feet on the bonsai pot mean? We're almost done. This is the final piece of the puzzle. This is the final piece of the formula. I'm so glad you guys have stayed with me. Everybody's been awake this whole time. I can't believe it. You guys are usually, somebody's asleep usually. I think Bart fell asleep and that's why he had to leave. Maybe he didn't. We'll see. Cut foot. A cut foot is pretty much the most common type of foot on a pot. It's the most simple. You can cut one out with a knife or a piece of clay wire. You can form one with your hand. Most feet are cut feet. We just call them a cut foot. It's the ultimate, gives the ultimate feeling of stability and simplicity. The stair step foot, by the way, these feet drawings, these quick feet sketches I did, these are from a side view now. A stair step foot gives a level of detail, enhanced level of detail. Could be paired with a tree that has more interesting features. It is more elegant. It is also less stable. So these stair step feet, you know, if you want to plant a tree in a pot and give the viewer a feeling of slightly less stability, this is the type of foot to use. A cloud foot. That Benda pot had a cloud foot. It had a little swirl in it. Sometimes you'll see a kind of a more ornate foot where there's little swirls. That's called a cloud foot. It's the supreme ornateness. It also carries high instability, a feeling of instability. The center of gravity of the tree must be over the base of the trunk. Must be over the base of the container. Since a cloud foot gives a feeling of such high instability. So you want to put the tree center of gravity should not necessarily break the rim of the pot, and you'll have a better composition because of it. Other feet include ornate feet, such as faces, cat paws, other things. I've seen people do little skulls or whatever. There's all kinds of, it's up to the bonsai potter. as to how creative they want to be with their pottery and with their feet. So what do you do with a face or cat paw or an ornate foot? It's sort of the same as you treat it similar to the cloud foot. It's high in stability. Keep that center of gravity of the tree over the base. We talked a little bit about non-bonds, or we talked about pots that have a cutout between the feet. Ryan typically places little rounded cutouts, like for a taiko pot. In fact, some of those taiko drum type pots have a little rounded cutout because their feet go all the way around the pot. And then maybe it might have a cutout on the front or a cutout on the other side, maybe two cutouts. Ryan typically places those cutouts off center from the front of the tree. And where you position on pots that have 3 feet, you can see down here, it looks kind of like udders, but it's not. those are 2 round pots. Those are two very crudely drawn drawings of a 3-footed round pot. So sometimes round pots especially, have only 3 feet. You can use the position of these feet to give the viewer a sense of instability by placing the foot in the center, or stability by placing the 2 feet in the center of the front of the tree. These are some little tips, little nuances. So here we go, another stack of pots. Nikki D'Amico round accent pot at the top of the stack here. This one has what I would consider cat paw feet, so more ornate. This is an accent plant pot, although I could put a little Shohin bonsai in here, I suppose. But with those feet, it would need to be a little bit more ornate. The rim of that pot is interesting. It's kind of like a piece of folded leather. So I guess if I was going to put a tree in this pot, I guess I would put some kind of a little juniper that has some dead wood, has some features, maybe is a little bit more ornate. With a pot that small and delicate, I could also get away with putting a deciduous tree in there, and emphasizing the feminine form of this pot as well. So kind of a fun little pot to play with. The middle pot, what really cool, Byron Myrick round lotus pot. So it's a round pot, but you can see it has some little insets. It has actually inset corners between those nautilus animals that he formed in there. It has little inset lotus type things. So this is a pot that's going to be better for a more strange, weird tree. It has midsection detail with these nautilus. It has inset corners, and it has little cloud feet that he formed by hand by twisting a piece of clay and then sticking it on there, making a cloud foot. So feeling of instability slightly. Last but not least, the pot at the bottom is a Horst Heinzelreiter horse. What can I say? Like, oh my God, look at that pot. It is incredible. As soon as I saw this pot at Ryan's, I had to have it. It's got so much ruggedness. It looks like a piece of rock, or it looks like a piece of, geology. The rim, you can see the rim has scallops in it. It's not a typical rim. The pot itself isn't even symmetrical. It has like a low point. It has a high point. And with all that asymmetry in the pot, look at what he did with the feet. It's a very symmetrical bottom. It uses a stair-step foot. And then we're talking about scalloped midsection, scalloped corners, scalloped rim. Just such a cool pot. I don't know what I'm going to put in this pot yet, but I'm on a mission to find a tree that...
Well, you have to find something there that has that instability that matches the pot.
Yeah.
But then those feet will anchor it back down.
Yeah.
They're showing the stability of the whole.
Yeah.
So you have to have something there that will sort of anchor itself with that composition.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very interesting tree.
Yeah, I think this tree, now the stair-step foot is more stable. It's more stable than a scalloped foot or a more ornate cloud style foot, but it's less stable than the cut foot, which is the most simple. So this foot gives me a little bit more detail. There's a little bit more ornateness. So this pot can handle a really cool tree. Yeah, I think. But yes, it is stable. You see the stable,
stability there,
and the feet are really
but
wide
that
on the
lower
pot.
rim
Yeah.
is flat, so it's bringing in extra stability into your whole design.
Yeah, the base of the pot is very flat,
Right.
while the rest of the
very
pot,
stable.
yeah, that base, we could call that a lower section band too. Although, yeah, that's a very creative pot, very different. I love anytime I see something that's really out of the box, just get it. Just get it. If you see something, look, you should have an unlimited budget on anything that makes you happy. If it brings you joy, just do it. Just get it. If you love to look at something, you owe it to yourself. Just get it. Don't put it off. Don't wait, because then you'll always wish that you had bought it. It's gonna be one of those things that you look back on and say, "Oh, I should have bought that watch, or I should have bought that motorcycle, or or I should have bought whatever, that house." So yeah.
I love his pots, and I wonder what you think. I'm not sure what I think. It seems like a big masculine aspen would go really nicely in there. But would that be too similar to the pot, do you think?
That pot kind of looks like bark of an aspen. In fact, I've seen aspens that have where the sap leaks out over like a place where it was wounded, and it looks the same color as that. That's all the same colors as an aspen, absolutely. Finding a masculine aspen, I don't know if that's. Most aspens I've seen, aspen bonsai, have been more feminine form, but who knows? You can find them, especially if you find aspen that have been gnawed down by beavers, then you might be able to find one that's more masculine. So, yeah. Now I'm on a mission to put something in this pot. Someday I'll have it. Someday I'll put it in this slideshow. Peter Carner oval pot. Peter Carner, this is a local artist. Reach out to him. If you like this stuff, reach out to him. See if he'll make you a pot. I mean, he's doing some really cool stuff. His stuff is so nice. So why does this composition work? I mean, what do you guys think? What about this composition is complementary?
Color palette. The round circles. Yeah.
Colors, round circles.
And the width of the trunk.
Sure. Yep. This is a good example of the rubber band effect, where we went with a deeper pot that's not as wide. What else? Right? You hit it. It's an ornate pot with an ornate tree. Right? This is a tree I call Miss Kim. This is a dwarf Korean lilac. Dwarf Korean lilac is a great bonsai species because it's already dwarfed. It has the smaller leaves. It also has small flowers. So it looks more in scale as a bonsai. They're very hardy. They're hard to kill. And when this tree blooms, I can bring it inside my house, and it makes my whole house smell like lilac. This is one of my best trees. This is a tree. The picture of this tree was this tree at its best. It hasn't looked this good actually ever since. I know this is me chasing the dragon. This tree, this photograph, this moment in time was the absolute climax for this tree. It's still a very cool tree. It looks good, but I've always been chasing this look, this photo. But I'm glad I have the photo. The tree is still looks cool. I put a little bit more negative space in it between the number 1 branch and the apex. Since the left side of the tree, which is actually another trunk, you can kind of see it. This tree is actually 2 trees. Well, the left side trunk is weak, is getting weaker and weaker, and so it's kind of dying off. So I'm gonna reinvent this tree someday. I'm gonna get this back into its former glory someday, but it's gonna take me, I bet I've got a 10-year project ahead of me just to get this tree anywhere similar to how it looks here.
Will, did you buy that domestically or online or?
So the pot.
No, the tree.
Oh yeah, this was dug up in Lakewood in a condominium complex that called Lakewood Commons. That they planted their They wanted to sell condos, so they told the landscaper, plant this place full of vegetation. Let's get a quick lush look. And then after a couple of years, or maybe it was like 5 or 6 years, it was like a jungle in there. So they told Daryl Havener, one of the members of our club, to bring the club over and we can have whatever we want. And we went through and we're looking at, and it's like, you know, they wanted us to just thin out the vegetation landscaping, and I found this tree. I dug it out of that condo complex. I saw that trunk, and I saw that it had some lower branches, and this thing became a bonsai actually very quickly. This was probably 3 or 4 years after collection, maybe less. Okay, let's get out of here. Outward rounded rim, ornate patterned glaze. Peter is just a master and really churns out some really cool fine art. Highly recommend supporting a local artist. This thing, again, his design language uses rounded corners, rounded cut feet, but he's a very good potter. He's a very good ceramicist. If you wanted to commission Peter, you could have him make you whatever shape you wanted, I think. And now, okay, here we go. We've increased our knowledge. We have a Tom Bender rectangle pot. It has a outward rim. It has cutout sharp corners and cloud feet. And I think that is it. You guys have the keys to world-class bonsai compositions. You have the knowledge. You have a full tank of gas. I want you guys to go out and make some great compositions. I'm so excited to see what you come up with. And if you ever want to use this formula, we are gonna put this out here, and we want you to use this formula, help it grow your bonsai knowledge, and let's see what you guys come up with. Thank you very much.